天我们有幸请到了好多年没来中国的 Eben， 树莓派基金会的创始人 ，Welcome。
I look exactly like I'm standing here.
So have a seat. We will start the. So I have talked to Christians from community a while ago. Now we'll start asking the Christians. We'll open the mic to many of the audiences. I think they have a lot to say. So, Eben, I think many years ago you came to China before, and it has been 6-7 years.
Yeah, so it's an incredibly long time. I think we were coming to, when the pandemic happened, we were probably about to come. So I think it's a lot of people who, where maybe someone who would come every 3 years, like we would typically do, suddenly found that 3 years had become 6 years.
Okay. So, what do you see the change? How do you feel Shenzhen is?
It's fascinating. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's still the same. It's still got that kind of energy. I mean, the thing I've always appreciated about being here is how fast people do things. The time scale that people do things on is a time scale of days and weeks, not weeks and months or months and years. And you can see that energy. That energy is still here. I think obviously you mentioned the geopolitical environment. What's fascinating is that doesn't seem to really be hurting. It doesn't seem to hurt Shenzhen. Maybe there's a sense of there's maybe a little bit more of a sense of distance between America and China, or between Europe and China now. But it doesn't seem to have hurt the energy here, which is super exciting. So I guess like a lot of our communities, it's the same but more. The same but with another 3 years, another 6 years of Moore's law. Your Wi-Fi modules now cost half the price. Everything costs less, or everything is more powerful at the same price. And, that's fascinating, because I think probably when I started Raspberry Pi 10 or 15 years ago, my assumption was that we were coming to the end of that era of explosive Moore's law, that era of explosive exponential growth. And it's kind of wonderful to see that still happening. And it's wonderful to see the interaction of that kind of explosive growth in computing power, or explosive collapse in cost, the interaction of that with the very short timescales of the Shenzhen.
I feel the same for Raspberry Pi. Raspberry has done so many things and so many advancements, all the way from board to courseware, contents, and silicons.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously been, since I was here last, probably the biggest change for us. I mean, I guess we were probably shipping Raspberry Pi 3 when I was here last week. Raspberry 3 was fairly new. And you've gone through, obviously, Raspberry Pi 3 Plus, Raspberry Pi 4, Raspberry Pi 5. So you've probably got a kind of roughly 10 to 10-fold increase in the performance of the Pi. When people think about Raspberry Pi, most people still think about the big, what I call big Raspberry Pi, the Linux computer. And that's now roughly 10 times the performance that it had when I was here last. But for me, kind of as somebody who's been making chips for most of my adult life, one way or another, it's super exciting that Raspberry Pi is now making its own silicon. Obviously, we had RP2040 appeared at the start of 2021. Perfect time, right? I mean, if you could have picked a time to launch a microcontroller, then the year when nobody else had any microcontrollers was probably a good time to do that. I mean, that's been a wonderful thing for us. It's just the sense that we'll talk a little bit about maker businesses. But one of the weaknesses, one of the pain points, obviously, I think for maker businesses over the last few years has been the supply chain environment. I mean, it's certainly all on that. So it's hurt you, it's certainly hurt us, hurt many of our customers. But we saw maker businesses who effectively could not do business for a period of 2 years because they had no access to semiconductors. And so to arrive with a semiconductor product that could sustain a lot of these maker businesses through the hard times, that was super exciting for us. And it's been really touching in the way that the RP2 platform, RP2040, as the maker community has kind of taken that to their heart, maybe in the way that a generation before they were using maybe AVR, some of the microchip parts. Kind of RP2040 has become quite central to the maker movement. And then JLC PCB, which is kind of this kind of interesting, sort of another interesting hub, like your organization, my organization, JLC is another interesting hub for the maker movement. Yes. That partnership that we have with them around enabling people to build RP2030-based products at scale. It's been wonderful to kind of plug again, as I say, the Shenzhen timescales into the growth of the RP2040 ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a very good synergy. Yeah. Like this is becoming a very interesting question. Like Raspberry Pi is coming from the Singapore computers. Now you have silicon. Where do you see it going? So what would Raspberry Pi become along this trend?
Well, no, it's a fascinating question. Is Raspberry Pi an electronics company, or is it a semiconductor? Is it a semiconductor company? Obviously, Raspberry Pi 5 is an interesting platform because for the first time we have Raspberry Pi silicon in a big Raspberry Pi. So the RP1 Southbridge, we announced. I hope most of you are aware. We announced Raspberry Pi 5 at the end of September. We are now manufacturing at scale and shipping them. It's the shipping at scale that deserves some woo, I think, given the amount of effort the team has been putting in. But this is a product. It's roughly 150 times faster than a Raspberry Pi 1 from 2012. And as I say, for the first time, we have 3 chips on there now. We have 3 custom chips on there. So we have a custom Renesas, custom PMIC, custom power management chip. We have another generation of Broadcom BCM2712, another generation of Broadcom core silicon. But then for the first time, what we have is the Raspberry Pi-ness of the Raspberry Pi. If you think that, what is a Raspberry Pi? Well, we've always seen ourselves as a PC company, but we know that most of our customers see us as an edge compute platform, as an interfacing edge compute platform, for which the interfacing capabilities of the platform are extremely important. What we've been able to do is take those interfacing capabilities and crystallize them into this RP1, about 20 square millimeters of 40 nanometer silicon that we designed at Raspberry Pi. And so you can see that certainly we're becoming more of a semiconductor company to the extent that it allows us to build more interesting electronic products. The question is, how much of our business is going to be about actually selling something? Because I don't think we're really necessarily planning to sell RP1 to other people. But the microcontrollers, certainly in terms of volume, sales to third parties, including you, dwarf the first party use. So we're probably consuming 1 million today. We're consuming 1 million RP2040s ourselves to build PKs and PKWs, and 1 or 2 accessories we have that have RP1 that have RP2040 in. But we're selling 4, 5, 6 million units a year of that product to third parties. So you can certainly see in terms of volume, at least that bit of our business is looking a lot more like a semiconductor business than electronics business.
But for the semiconductor companies, they look at Raspberry Pi now as in a very different way. You make semiconductors, but you have a Singapore computer, you have operating system, you have like offline shops.
Yes. There's only one other company that looks like this, right? And they're named after a fruit as well. So, we're little baby, what are we? We're little baby apple now. There is that idea. And I think we're an end-to-end company, right? So we are, even that the silicon we get from Broadcom, some of the IP in there, like the video decoder or the camera processing block in 2712, that was developed at Raspberry Pi and provided to Broadcom for integration into the silicon. So you can see we're doing everything from semiconductor IP development, chip development, electronic product development, software, community, ecosystem management, courseware. Once if you stretch out to the foundation, courseware, teacher training, teaching kids, right? You do that whole, as you say, now 2 physical shops. We have a second shop now in the UK. So you can see that we have this end-to-end orientation in the business, and I think we do it for the same reason that Apple do it, which is control, right? And if you want to make really great products, there's no substitute for touching if you touch every stage of the design process, you can optimize. You can just settle and optimize. If you look at a Raspberry Pi 5, so we talked about RP1. What we have is it's a chiplet architecture. It's what today we call the chiplet architecture, where you split the functionality of what's effectively 1 chip into 2 chiplets. And those 2 chiplets, 2712 and RP1, are connected together by a 4-lane PCI Express bus. And if you look at the PCB, you see this freeways, motorway of lanes, just parallel lanes going between the 2 chips. Why are they parallel lanes? They're parallel lanes because we control the ball out of the 2 chips at the 2 ends. We control RP1's ball out because we designed it, We control 2712s for that because we've got a very close relationship with our supplier. What that means is because the positions of the balls match to allow you to move to allow you to have parallel lanes, you don't spend PCB tech in swapping lanes around. Because you don't spend PCB tech in swapping lanes around, you have a cheaper PCB, right? So and that level of control across the entire stack. And then down at one end, if we're designing the video codec IP that decodes video frames, and we're writing the operating system right at the other end of the stack, we can arrange for the pixels to come out of the video codec in a format which makes life easy for the software. And if you control all this stuff, you can build better products, you can build cheaper products, you can build more efficient.
So, and to hear from you, to summarize, can we understand that Raspberry Pi, like Apple, is a computer for consumers, and Raspberry Pi will be the computer for the makers?
It's a computer for everyone. It's computing for everyone. The strap line on our, we're going to present the company to people. Now the strap line is computing for everyone, right? If someone adds two numbers together, I want them to do it on a Raspberry Pi platform, right? That's the vision. That we really want to build provide that underpinning for all the work you do, for all the work that all of you in this room do. We want to provide the computational substrate, regardless of whether you want to build a little $1 device on top of RP2040, or you want to build a $500 device and you want to embed a compute module or a high-end compute module 5 into it in our Linux side. We want to be the computational substrate for people's work, for all your work. And we want to take away, there's an enormous amount, where we've succeeded, I think it's where we've helped people stop doing things they don't want to do. Okay. We've met a lot of companies over the years, a lot of our OEM partners, who are making hardware, making Linux computers, basically, in small quantities, 1,000, 10,000 a year, in order to run some piece of software. We see this a lot in thin client. It's very tall, digital sign, thin client, where a company has a software platform, and their differentiation is in software. Yes. And yet they're building hardware because they need somewhere to run their software. And what we've allowed these companies to do is to stop building hardware and just use our hardware and focus on the thing they're good at. So that's the aspiration, really, to just be an enabler. Obviously, we have decade of experience now being an enabler, providing people with electronic products. The question really for me now is, can we do the same thing in semiconductors as well?
Yep, squeeze it, put it into everything.
Yeah, and crush the prices down. So what I'm excited about with the microcontroller platform is we're crushing prices down. This is the RP2040, this is 70 cents. It's 70 cents and 3,400 off. That price will come down over time. We really have this aspiration to drive costs out of computing. We want people to be able to add numbers together very cheaply. Yep. Maybe that should be our strapline: add numbers together cheaply.
I think it's about the next activities. Like CM5, can we talk about Raspberry 5? It's having a lot of improvements. You have done a lot of changes, advancements. So what will be the most important change versus the previous version that's enabling new applications to come out?
Well, we talk about one of the reasons why semiconductors is important to us is because it's a different. It keeps Raspberry Pi exciting for me. I need a constant supply of new things to be excited by. And the interesting thing about the big Raspberry Pi product is that although it's fun to work on, and it's hugely intellectually challenging and consumes a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of great engineers. Fundamentally, what you build each time is the same thing, but more. So to a large extent, CM5 is going to be the same, but more. It's a CM4, but it's faster. It is going to have one cute new feature, though. It is going to have USB 3. It's going to have USB 3 coming out over the connector. And I think that is it's one of those, we always struggle, I think, to predict which aspects of our platform are going to be exciting for people, but I do think that having USB 3 directly out of CM is going to be nice. But yeah, semiconductors is important because the things we make in our semiconductor world are genuinely new. So like Pico, I'm so proud of Pico. I love the Pico products. It's the cheapest thing we make, but it's different. It's completely different when we launched it. It was completely different to anything we'd ever made. A microcontroller platform for the first time. A thing with the Raspberry Pi name on that didn't run Linux. It's fun. Yeah.
But as Raspberry Pi is becoming more advanced, more powerful, and a little bit more expensive than $35.
Yeah, it's no $35 product.
Does it mean that like you are deprioritizing educations?
That's a very good question. I don't think we're deprioritizing education. I think what we're seeing is we've got to acknowledge that our business is now an industrial business, right? You know, where 70-80% of Raspberry Pis now sell into industry. Now, industry doesn't necessarily mean 100,000 units, selling 100,000 units to, Siemens or someone. Often it means selling 100 units to a maker, to somebody who's going on that journey. I'm sure a lot of you have been on this room, from making one of something for yourself to making 100 or 1,000 of something to sell to other people, right? So we've got to recognise that change in our business. But I think education is super important. I think we will try and do a lower cost SKU of Raspberry Pi 5. I doubt we'll do a $35. I doubt we'll do a $35 Raspberry Pi 5. If you look at the cost structure of the platform, some of the work we've had to do, we've got about a threefold performance increase over Raspberry Pi 4. Some of the things we've had to do to enable that aren't cheaper. I really don't want people to see it as a deprioritization of education. It's the addition of a new focus on industrial, and of course on Raspberry Pi as a PC. We've always told ourselves that Raspberry Pi is a PC, that what we're making is a PC, and it's always been true. But only Raspberry Pi 1 is only a PC for 1% of users, 1% of PC users who just want a little bit of performance. And each generation has broadened out the pool of people for whom Raspberry Pi is a PC. Raspberry Pi 4, I think, was a PC for the average user. And of course, during the pandemic, we shipped a lot of Raspberry Pis to kids, really disadvantaged kids in the UK who didn't have computers to study at home. It was a good enough PC for them. The fun thing about Raspberry Pi 5 is that it's a PC for me. I'm a reasonably power user, right? And if I sit in front of a Raspberry Pi 5, I forget that I'm not sitting in front of a traditional x86 Intel PC, which is kind of fun.
I think a lot of people here might not be aware that Raspberry Pi has been selling 60% or 70% to industrial users, which also like I was sharing in the beginning, what we see is a lot of makers maybe starting from Raspberry Pi as education. They try it for something they like, then they graduate. They go to factories, they go to farm, they go to all kinds of companies. What will they use? They just use Raspberry Pi as an industrial controller, a gateway, or anything.
Yeah. And this is a lesson. I think this was a lesson from Arduino. The way that the business that Arduino has created. This is we talk about some of the challenges that maker businesses have. Arduino has made a lot of money from Microchip, right? And they haven't got any of that money, themselves. You know what it's like?
But the difference is like what we see very interesting thing for the last 3 years. Arduino is making 10 times more expensive Raspberry Pi, while Raspberry Pi is making like 10 times cheaper Arduino.
Yes. It's an interesting flight. I mean, certainly, it's one of the reasons why we built semiconductors, because the observation that Arduino makes money for their chip vendor. They don't make money for themselves, right? Out of the classic machine. I mean, Portento and stuff, of course, is a different business, but the Uno business made a lot of money from Microchip, and so we sort of saw, why did we never do a microcontroller product before? We never did a microcontroller product before because we just would have made money for our microcontroller partner.
You always choose the hardware road.
We definitely chose the hard road. And so if the semiconductor company is going to make the money, the solution is to be the semiconductor company, right? And as you say, we chose the hard road, and that was a long, hard road. But it was worth it in the end, because it means I don't mind. People say, how do I feel if people select a Zhao device instead of a Pico? That's why I don't care, because they're still my customer. They're either my customer or they're my customer via you. That's still fine.
And there's one thing I feel like very respected and amazed by Raspberry Pi is most of the product you make are very successful. So I think it could be deserve a question from the maker who are making their own product. How do you define a product? Is it from the strategy or is it from the community?
Yeah, it's slightly neither of those. We talk about the other fruit company, the company that we call the other fruit company, the one in Cupertino. And there's a sort of a way of thinking about Apple, which is that in their kind of their two classic eras when they were run by Steve Jobs, they were really a company that built the things Steve wanted. And it turned out there were just a lot of people who wanted the things that Steve wanted. And it's a powerful way, and that's how we design products, right? We make the products we want. So it is slightly the community. It's slightly the community, but it's the community via us. Because we are community members, we're building the products we want, and because we're just like you, often the things that we make for ourselves you want to buy. I think it's a really powerful way of designing products, rather if you compare it to a strategic view, a marketing-led view, a focus group-led view. It's really powerful because I have some experience from elsewhere in my career of what happens when you try to design products led by marketing strategy. And it's very easy to design products that nobody wants because you say, well, this guy told me he wants this thing, and this guy told me he wants this thing, and this guy told me he wants this thing. So I'll make kind of a product in the middle there somewhere that hopefully will cover all those people. And by trying to appeal to all those people, you appeal to nobody, right? Where if you design a product you want, then at least one person wants it, right? And if one person wants it, then maybe two people want it, right? And so that's how we design our products. We just make the things we want. Just a bunch of geeks in a room building things we want to build.
So the end of the product is philosophy.
Yeah, that's it. It's all philosophy in the end, right?
Well, I think we can continue on tech details for now 2 hours. But I think
let's do that.
Really?
Let's do that. But let's go out after we run out of time here. Let's just go out in the alley there and talk about silicon.
I think we can carry the more technical questions to Sunday afternoon. We have a meetup. Because of the audiences, I think is of totally different background, but one, I think, common character is Chinese community. So how important or how special is Chinese community to Raspberry Pi design?
It's enormously important to us, I guess for a couple of reasons. One, as I say, there's a huge sense of speed here. Right, this is the most demanding. This is the most demanding market, the least forgiving market in some ways. People have the highest expectations in terms of speed and availability and agility. If you want to succeed in the Chinese market, you've got to have products. You've really got to have products that people want. And you got to remember how insulated we are in the West. Actually, insulated from competition. One thing that so thinking about the semiconductor space, the way you can buy the most incredible semiconductor products here, and nobody in the West knows about them, right? And you have Western semiconductor companies who are selling absolute garbage compared to what you can buy very cheaply here if you're embedded in the local community. So I think it's important to us as a stress test. One of the things I've been most pleased about with RP 2040 is that it's been able to succeed not just in the West, where it's competing against these kind of high cost, high margin, old line semiconductor companies, STMicro, right? That it can succeed here in China, where it's competing in a much more brutal environment. People still appreciate it. So it's important to us as a kind of an extreme example of an environment to try and sell our products in. It's important to me because there's enormous domestic demand for all our Raspberry Pi products in China. So it's a hugely important end market for us. And then finally, it's important. It is our second largest. It's in terms of total sales, it's our second largest market after the United States. Those sales are a mixture of this enormous domestic demand. Although, given the population here, it's clearly underpenetrated. It should be 5-6 times the size of the United States, right? So it's clearly underpenetrated. But we have some domestic demand, and we also have systems integration demand. As I say, the vast majority of Raspberry Pi use is industrial and embedded use. If you're embedding the Raspberry Pi into a product, where are you doing that embedding? For sale in America. Where are you doing that embedding? You're probably doing it within 100 miles of this room, right? So there's a huge amount of systems integration business here. and it's a market that's increasingly important to us. Of course, we have a lot of fantastic partners here, including you guys, who help us address that market.
Yeah, we have like special trick during our hiring process. If we want to find some resumes, we just check if he has like mentioned Raspberry Pi in his resume. If he is, he will be very much like the people we are looking for. And we check with this person no matter it's embedded or computer science or other like design majors. Have you used a Raspberry Pi? If no. Yes. So which also means it's still like a very minority of the population of the young students. They know Raspberry Pi and use that. They form a community by themselves because they are quite lonely. Like we are here, we are very lonely, so we gather around.
I don't feel particularly lonely in this room, I have to say.
What I'm saying is, if these people, besides using Raspberry Pi and all the softwares, VPN, and there's a lot of belongings that should be contributed to. How can we invite Raspberry Pi to have more community presence and to show the?
We're a very strange company, right? In that we don't have a lot of we're very British. We don't have a lot of people outside the UK, and we don't have any first-party representation here. Of course, we have this long-standing relationship with EDA with Austin Su's team at EDA who provide a sort of a virtual Raspberry Pi presence in China. I do think it's getting towards time that having somebody west of Cambridge, east of Cambridge, would be. We have a few people in North America now, but having somebody east of Cambridge might be quite nice. It's always a balance. It's a balance for us, and it's a balance for the foundation. Because remember, we're two different organisations. The foundation is my shareholder. The foundation is the thing I founded that now owns most of my company. It's a balance for us in terms of trying to be scalable. Trying to be able to address all different markets around the world without having hundreds and hundreds of people. Versus this challenge, as you say, of how do you support the community? Yeah, particularly a very vibrant community like the one we have here in China. Yeah. But it could be bigger. I love the thing about asking people. Thank you for asking people if they've used Raspberry Pi. The question I always used to ask before Raspberry Pi existed, when I was hiring people, when I was getting students into Cambridge, or I was hiring people to come work for me Broadcom. The question I always used to ask was, have you ever written a computer program that you didn't have to write? Right? Have you ever written if you've only ever written a computer program because someone paid you to do it, or you've only ever written a computer program because you have to do it for your university course, your school course, or your university course, I probably don't want to know you. Well, I don't know you that person, but I probably don't want to employ you as that sign, that sign that you're in some way elite. And this is like the Maker movement. This is surprisingly elite movement of people who are doing deeply technical work that they don't have to do. Right? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, all of us in this room, we are doing something really very, very unusual and incredible. And we should be proud that we do that. We should, maybe we go watch the football as well. But, that at least we take some portion of our time and we spend it doing this self-consciously elite activity.
Yeah, we don't talk about Chinese football.
Yeah, no, really? Well, I was in Paris a couple of weekends ago, and when I booked it, I very, very much hoped that either England or Wales would be in the Rugby World Cup final. But England came third, so it's not too bad.
So I hope I'm not asking too much, but thank you so much for being here. I think it's a very good encouragement for the Chinese community already. And I think this Raspberry Pi is not only a board, it's actually an interface to the global ecosystem. So happy to be here. And before I think we have question first. I've done my part. Or do you have any question? I think it's a conversation. Do you have any question to ask or to the community here?
Well, I guess, I'll ask you this question, but I'm kind of asking the community the question through you, I suppose, which is, what can we do to be helpful? What are we not doing now? You mentioned obviously better local support for the community. What else could we be doing either in respect of the community or in respect of technology to help you, to help the broader Chinese maker community go to scale. Yeah, I think you had the hype curve earlier. You had the hype curve where we do feel like we are. Your organisation and my organisation are very unusual in that we've succeeded. We've lived and succeeded, and we've come through some kind of hard times. And I think we've got to help. We've got to help more businesses. There's only a handful of us. You, me, Arduino, Adafruit. There are companies that have succeeded at scale in this business for a long time, but they're fairly rare. You could count them on the fingers of your two hands. What could we do to help you, to help other people prosper?
I think it's a very good start coming to Maker Faire Shenzhen. And beyond that, I think a lot of engineers, after they learn Raspberry Pi, now they go into product design. They design the silicons inside their products. I think if we have more like a Chinese documentation support or community with official presence, I think it's going to collect more questions or suggestions. And I think also people want to expose themselves if they have done some great work. But maybe it's language, maybe where Chinese are usually more shy than me. So maybe Raspberry Pi could be a platform, not only for they buy from, but also show off too.
Yes. No, that's fascinating. I mean, certainly the foundation has a thing called Coolest Projects. It has this physical and virtual set of events called Coolest Projects for young people. And it's amazing. I remember this when I was a child. I used to go to a computer club. Every other Friday night, my friend Alan Drew would pick me up in his car, pack up my BBC microcomputer, take it along, unpack it, and show what I'd done to other people. And the value of showing what you've done to people. We see this at Coolest Projects. You see these rows and rows and rows of kids with things they built using Raspberry, not just using Raspberry, using Raspberry Pi, using Arduino, using other platforms. And just how proud they are, and how you see that they go away with a new sense of energy, a new sense of motivation.
Exactly.
And I think we've done that in the context of children, and I think it applies to all of us. I mean, I tell you, one of my happiest moments of the Raspberry Pi era was I wrote a version of, there's a computer game called 2048. It's a simple computer game called 2048. And I wrote a version of it in my spare time about 6 or 7 years ago for the BBC Micro, in 652 assembler for my BBC Micro. And I got it reviewed in a magazine, in a retro computer gaming magazine, and I got a positive review for it. And I had a write-up for something that wasn't Raspberry Pi. It was nothing to do. I mentioned what I'd done. We mentioned Raspberry Pi, but it was about something else. And just that glow of recognition, I was walking on air for a week. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I think this is very important because the real competitor for Raspberry Pi, I don't think is under ASPC. It's examinations. So Raspberry Pi, if you can provide more why of doing all this kind to your parents, to the teachers, I think that's the best opportunity.
Yes.
Then they see, okay, I'm doing this to join the global collaborations of something great.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that explaining to parents why letting their children be part of this thing that we've created together. Explaining to parents why the maker community is important. Why there's more to life than we have some young makers there. Explaining why it's important to play. And while it may look like play, it's developing things inside your mind. It's important. And, I don't have a good solution for it, but I would say that the people I know who've been the people I knew as a child who've been most successful as adults have been the people who played most. Yeah.
So who has any questions? I think we can go for almost you.
So the previous dialogue talked about education, perspectives as education and industrial. What about the current large language model? What roles will Raspberry Pi play in supporting the edge computing and the interface of the this large LLM?
It's interesting. sort of 30 seconds on Raspberry Pi and AI. Raspberry Pi doesn't have an integrated AI accelerator, and it probably never will do. And why doesn't it? Well, it doesn't because I think that it's only of interest to a small number of Raspberry Pi users. It's an expensive feature to provide in terms of silicon area, and therefore you are taxing. If 10% of people want it, you're making 90% of people pay money for a feature to help 10% of people. So I think we do two things with our Raspberry Pi. We try to put big CPUs, fast CPUs, into so that you can run. So an LLM, you can do. I think the Llama, the 7 billion coefficient Llama, will do about a token every 10 seconds on a Raspberry Pi 4. I suspect this means it will do about a token every 3 seconds on a Raspberry Pi 5, which is not super fast. But you can do some work. So the idea is some workloads can run on the CPU. If you want to run a workload which runs on the CPU, our goal is to be a good host for external accelerators. So in the good old days, when people were talking about it, when people said AI a year ago, even, if you said AI to me, you weren't talking about LLMs. You were talking about CNNs. You were talking about image processing. The Coral accelerators from Google, we try very hard to be a good host for the Coral accelerators. So I think you'll see that faster CPUs, PCI Express and USB 3 to talk to accelerators. It's an exciting thing. I think really, what have we got to do as a community? I think we all have to, because we know what we're talking about. I think we need to be, there's a bit of danger with LLMs. People think that it's going to make computer programming not be a thing anymore. Right? Anyone will be able to write a computer program because they'll just be able to say to ChatGPT, write me a computer program. This is insane, but it sounds very plausible. It's insane because telling ChatGPT to write your computer program is just computer programming. So it's crazy, but it sounds plausible. And so there's a real risk for those of us who work in education policy that governments will deprioritize teaching people about engineering, making, computer programming, because they will imagine that LLMs are going to make that go away as a discipline, rather than making computer programming more productive. And thereby, whenever you make computer programming, the historical lesson is when you make computer programmers more productive, you increase the demand for computer programmers, not reduce the demand for computer programmers. But we're going to do our best. We'll do our best as an engineering company, but increasingly the foundation is thinking very, very hard about how to position AI within the computer science education world.
Thank you. Hi, Eben. I have two questions. One is on the supply side, one is on the demand side. So on the supply side, Raspberry Pi, was kind of unavailable, out of stock for a long time.
Yeah.
So how could silicon, and you mentioned silicon shortage and these kind of stuff. So how can, in your mind, how can silicon suppliers or distributors help with that? That's a question on the supply side.
Mm-hmm.
And the question on the demand side is, I think China, US, UK, Europe, we're in a pretty abundant resource in terms of just the availability of hardware and the community. But how do you think about in the areas where there are not major distributors around, areas like Africa, like Indonesia, those emerging world, even Bhutan, how do we get these hardware in those markets?
The shortage, look, it's been a horrible couple of years. We were in shortage for basically 25, 26 months from about April of 21 to about June, July of this year. We are now back in full stock everywhere, which is great. Obviously, Raspberry Pi 5. People keep buying them. I keep making them, people keep buying them. We had some great support from our silicon vendors all the way through the shortage. It was never that we couldn't make Raspberry Pi; it was that there was a lot of demand. In fact, I think what had happened early on was people had moved to Raspberry Pi in the expectation that we were safe, and of course we weren't safe. It turned out we went down to last year we made 5 million Raspberry Pis, which is the smallest number of Raspberry Pis we've made since about 2017. Right, so it's very painful for us. What can silicon companies do? Like I said, our suppliers were very good to us. I have no, obviously it'd be great if it's given us twice as much silicon, but it's very hard to go to your supplier and say in the middle of a shortage, please double my silicon supply. You're lucky if you get what you got last year, right? I think though some other companies did treat their Maker customers badly. I know Maker, I talked about RP 2040 saving Maker businesses, but Microchip, NXP, ST, they just threw their Maker customers under a bus, right? And I think so I think what could they do better next time? Hopefully there isn't a next time. I think that was the worst. That's the worst it's ever been. I mean, this is so bad. This last few years is so bad. It's probably as bad as it's been since the invention of the point contact diode, right? So, since the invention of semiconductors, it's never been that bad. But, next time there'll be cycles and there'll be another cycle. I hope that next time people remember that the Maker community are extremely important as a route for market access. I think that some of those vendors have permanently damaged their position in the Maker community, and I think that's a shame because I think they are good products. All those companies, obviously not as good as RP 2040, but all those companies, they do have good products. They do have relevant products, and I think it's a shame that they didn't set aside a little bit of volume. So I think that's a thing that people could do more helpful. The availability issue, the issue of availability in non-traditional markets. So Mike Buffon, my chief commercial officer, is here with us this weekend. I had a lovely trip to Ghana and Kenya with him last year. He gave a talk in Nairobi, and he said that he's come from a distribution background. He used to work for Premier Fire, Arrow before that. And he said for 30 years, he's been in senior roles in distribution, all of which have the word global in their title. And the first time he went to Africa was January last year, right? It is incredible the extent to which the distribution community do not see these countries. Africa for distribution in South Africa, right? Or maybe a little bit of Francophone North Africa, but there's a whole block in the middle there that people just don't see. We're actually building Raspberry Pi Pico in Nairobi now. We're probably going to move all Pico production to Nairobi. Why are we doing that? It's not quite as economic as our existing model, but what we're trying to do, we have a contract manufacturing partner there, and we're trying to bootstrap their relationship with distribution. Right? We're trying to, if you have a few $1 million of money flowing through there, and they're buying resistors and capacitors, then they're going to be more visible to the distribution community. We're building out a distribution capability in sub-Saharan Africa. Probably once we have a little more work to do in South America. Once we've done sub-Saharan Africa, really all that's left is, kind of Bhutan, right? There's a relatively small number of countries left once we've done that. I think there's another area where the Shenzhen, the Chinese community, particularly the Shenzhen community, can be helpful. I went to see some people building industrial agritech robots in Accra, in Ghana, and they built a robot for planting seeds. And I had a complicated PCB with some Raspberry Pi technology on it. And I said, when did you get the PCB made? And they said, well, JLC, when does anyone get a PCB made? Right? So there is a sense that the kind of more aggressive, more enthusiastic engagement of China with Africa can be, compared to the UK or North America engagement in Africa, can be a vector. It can be a route by which African countries can access the kind of state-of-the-art technology, which otherwise they'll be standard from. I think sometimes people talk negatively about Africa, about China's involvement in Africa, but I think it could be an enormous. You look at the amount of infrastructure in Kenya that's being paid for with Chinese money. I think it can be a very, very positive. It's a mixed bag always, but it can be a very, very positive. It can be a force of good.
So it's like an advertisement. On Sunday morning, we're going to have another meetup. It's called Untitled Age, led by Delisha. We'll be talking about how do we do digital transformation in developing countries. So welcome to join us for that topic. And I think we have.
If you have a chance to go to Africa, if you have a chance to go to, Kenya is a great example. If you ever have a chance to travel to Kenya and interact with the Maker community in Kenya, you will just be amazed by, if you think that there is enthusiasm for technology here in Shenzhen, the level of enthusiasm for technology as a way forward for a country that you find in the capital cities of many, many African countries, whether that's Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, the amount of enthusiasm you see there, it's incredible. I think you'll be as blown away by it as I was.
Sure, we do. So can we have one more question? Okay.
I think my first question is focus on education and how do you think Raspberry Pi to play a role in the cross-learning course? And my second question is focus on economics. And how do you see the Raspberry Pi play a role in the developers country?
So what was the first one? How do I see it playing a role in?
Just like the cross learning, just like the the college and university to start like art and come to engineering to.
Okay. Yes. So look, this is interesting. I am a enormous geek. And I've been an enormous geek since I was 5 years old. Right? If I hadn't had a chance to learn about computers in my home, in school, in my home, kind of organically, you could have got me interested in computers with a course about if statements, right, and functions and variables, right. I'm interested in computers for their own sake, right. That makes me part of about between 1% and 5% of the population are interested in computers because they're computers. The rest of the population, if they're interested in computers, if we're going to get them interested in computers, we have to position computers as a way of solving a problem that they have. They're not interested in computers for their own sake. They're interested in computers, or can be made interested in computers as a tool, as a screwdriver, as a hammer, something that solves problems. I am always more excited when I see a Raspberry Pi in an art classroom than I am when I see one in a computer science classroom. Because what it means is that somebody is seeing our product as a way of building an art installation, as a way of measuring something for a geography class. These are all the non-traditional uses of computing are super, super important. And by providing low-cost computing, providing good support material, I think there's a good chance we can accomplish that. Your second question was about economics?
Yes, I focus on the places in the developed countries. How the Raspberry Pi play a role.
Yeah. So what's interesting, I see Raspberry Pi as a PC, but in our developed countries we have a lot of PCs. Kind of. Although my country's government, which is made up like most governments of rich people, sent all of our children home in March 2020 to study from home. 700,000. This is Britain. Britain's a small country, right? 700,000 families in Britain had their children sent home with no computer at home to study from. We had children trying to study on their mother's mobile phone, right? Trying to do a day of schoolwork on their mother's or father's mobile phone. A family of five with 3 kids huddled around a phone. So even in Britain, there aren't PCs. And in the pandemic, we were privileged to be able to use Raspberry Pi to address that shortage. The same effect is magnified in the developing world, right? That there are enormous opportunities for us all. Enormous opportunities. Most of us in this room were very lucky to grow up with access to computing hardware, right? There are enormous opportunities available if you have access to a computer. In the developing world, sometimes 1%, 2%, 5% of people have PCs. So Raspberry Pi can play a role there by reducing the barriers to accessing this incredibly powerful tool that has benefited all of us. Yeah.
Just like me, like 12 years old, I born in Guangxi province, and that's the customer is the hotels. So I like to buy my first Raspberry Pi is 0.
Yes.
But I selected like okay, one month, just like it changed me and
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
I'm really glad to hear it because that's the business we're in, right? And it's the business. Yeah, I mentioned in industry. Industry is enormously important to us, but it is still the case that trying to change people's lives at a young age. I have people working for me now. I have 2 people working for me now who got their first experience working for me at Raspberry Pi. Who got their first experience with computing on a Raspberry Pi. Right? It's a closed loop. It's a closed loop system now. And yeah, it's the most exciting.
Yep, thanks for the questions, but we really need to wrap that up for this first session. And to wrap it up, we have a gift for you. Not from me, it's from the community. Do you recognize this?
Very cool. I do recognize this. Wow, there you go, look at this. It's got the best. I see you over there, Mr. Commodore. Yeah, there you are. This is the computers that made Britain.
Yeah, and let me
so
tell you the story.
Yeah.
I am just a career to send this to you by hand. And after I announced you are coming, there's a team in Beijing. They contact us. They say, okay, finally we know that Raspberry Pi is coming to China, but we cannot come. Would you please pass this book? We translated by the volunteers, by the students.
Wow.
There, if you open it up, there's a list of the volunteers, I think it's 20 or 30 kids, middle school or primary school students. They work online.
Round of applause for these people. My favourite bit of launching new Raspberry Pi products, favourite but also terrifying moment, is we do a credits list. If you go to the Raspberry Pi 5 launch blog post, there is a credits list. This is the first launch where the credits list got so long that Liz made me put the credits list on a separate page. This is over 500 people. But it's wonderful, you know, when you do something like this or something like a Raspberry Pi, and then you write down all the people who helped. It's something I really would encourage you to do if you launch products. Do credits. It's terrifying because the one guy you forget about will hate you a lot more than 100 people you remember. But you know, if you can get it right. What I did this time was I outsourced a lot of the list to other people. So I outsourced the work, but I also outsourced the blame for any forgetfulness. But no, this is wonderful. So thank you very much.
And there's more to that.
Oh, there we are.
So I believe every student has been participating in this project can be very proud of it, and they will keep evolving more into the global community. And they didn't just do it silently. They wrote an email, actually, to Raspberry Pi Foundation, the girl who wrote it is named Elsa. And there's, I think, a lady from Raspberry Pi Foundation called Anna, replied. And with all the right handwritings and the impressed on the back page, they feel so much recognized.
Anna Nelson.
Yeah, and so that's a gift. Inside the book, there's a SD card. They made a mini game, and that runs on Raspberry Pi.
Oh wow! Well, I'm going to take this home and have a play with it. Please pass on my thanks.
Yeah, we will totally do that, and we'll shoot them in the video. Okay, thanks, Eben. Thank you so much.